Well, it's finally time. You know what? No funny gimmicks, no gags, no quips. Let's just do this and get it over with. Capcom Vancouver finally got to fly solo and create a Dead Rising game without Keiji Inafune's involvement, and there's the first of many warning signs. Dead Rising 3 launched exclusively for the Xbox One in November 2013, only 2 years after Dead Rising 2 Off the Record, with the PC version releasing in September of 2014. The tradition of introducing a new protagonist for each numbered entry continues here, with you taking control of Nick Ramos, a mechanic trapped in the city of Los Perido, however it's pronounced. For a change of pace, the story begins 3 days into an outbreak, and things have already gone to hell. Nick and no less than 3 separate sets of interchangeable supporting cast members discover the quarantine and evacuation sites around the city aren't exactly operational. It's okay though, one of Nick's childhood friends conveniently has the keys to a plane. Problem is, the plane won't fly without certain components. There's your base objective. Complete busy work in exchange for plane parts, fix it, and fly yourself out of the danger zone. It's literally the plot of Dead Rising 2 Case Zero all over again, just swap that game's bike for this one's plane. It does have a little bit more going on than that. As I've been keeping these reviews spoiler-free, all I'll say is it draws heavily on the existing canon, and probably shouldn't be played without having knowledge of the previous game's plots. That said, if you did enjoy the previous games, maybe you shouldn't play this, as Dead Rising 3 will tarnish the older entries. Despite 1 or 2 moments that genuinely made me think, oh, that's kind of cool, the bulk of the game made me cringe as it disgraced existing characters and continued to feel like poorly written fan fiction. For example, at the very start of the game, a plane crashes due to zombies being on board. Cool set piece, but this is 3 days into an outbreak. The city is under quarantine, no planes should be taking off or landing. A plane shouldn't even be in Los Peridos airspace. It couldn't have taken off pre-outbreak, as it'd have to have been in the sky circling the city for 3 days on 1 tank of fuel. So where did the infected aboard the plane come from? Is there an outbreak in another city? It doesn't make sense. The whole thing is a hot mess. Even Nick himself is written inconsistently, switching constantly from a frightened everyman to an 80s action hero badass, and then back again, sometimes within the same cutscene. Before we talk about the gameplay, I want to address some performance issues. I'm playing the PC version on Steam because I don't own an Xbox One. To be frank, the PC version has issues. I'm sure you've already noticed the screen tearing, even during cutscenes, unstable frame rate, notable stuttering, and objects popping in, to name but a few. These issues are widely documented and bemoaned, so I don't believe this is just an issue with my PC, especially considering the other games I can run without issue. This game was ported so badly that it can't run for more than 15 minutes on Windows 10 unless you go into Task Manager and disable touch keyboard and handwriting. From my limited understanding, the game calls for an audio driver from DirectX 9, despite the title requiring DirectX 11. The DLL file for that audio driver conflicts with tabtip.exe, aka touch keyboard, and this causes the crash. You'd think with the game having been out on PC for over 2 years and the recent celebration of Dead Rising's 10th anniversary, these issues would have been patched out, but no! Nothing's been done to fix the game, and it's unlikely to ever run smoothly unless fans take it upon themselves. Wow, we've gotten this far before even discussing gameplay. For the most part, it's your standard Dead Rising affair with a couple of new additions, such as a sprint button. You can now craft combo weapons on the fly at any time, giving you access to an impressive arsenal at a moment's notice. Yes, the combo weapons were overpowered in Dead Rising 2 as well, but at least in that game you had to reach the safety of a workbench first. The level up system, which has been changed to let the player choose their own perks, even lets you gain the ability to combo any 2 items together to make a combo weapon, provided they belong to the right category. For example, you can make a ZAR assault rifle, which would usually require an assault rifle and a shotgun, by combining any 2 guns. It's not just the weapons that can be combined this time around. You can also merge two vehicles together to hit the roads in a literal killing machine. You get access to these within the first hour of play, and they're pretty much unstoppable. It's just as well, because with a much larger map, you're going to be doing a lot of driving in this game. Too much driving, if you ask me. Previous games restricted vehicles to set areas as a novelty. This one requires you to use them constantly, especially in missions, as it's not practical or timely to move around on foot. This entry boasts it can render 3 times as many zombies on screen at any one time in comparison to Dead Rising 2. Now every area of the map looks like the underground tunnels from the original Dead Rising, and that's a terrible thing. Over the course of the franchise, zombies have been getting progressively dumber so that more of them can be on screen at the same time without the player being overwhelmed by aggressive foes. Come Dead Rising 3, the zombies now feel like cattle. They're no longer a threat, they're just there for your amusement. This is particularly evident in the combat system, which now gives you experience multipliers and special finishing moves to reward high kill combos. Survivors are also less important now than ever before. Most of the time it'll just be somebody surrounded by zombies asking you to clear a path. As soon as that's done, the survivor runs away and that's it. No escorting them to a safe house, just some experience points and watching them run off into the sunset to never be heard from again. There are some survivors who do stick around, usually after you complete a fetch quest for them, but instead of being escorted to a safe haven, they'll join your posse. Yes, that's what the game calls it. They're effectively backup you can call upon at any time as an AI-controlled co-op partner, with you switching party members in and out from a notice board. Safe houses do still exist, however now they act primarily as a clothing and weapons locker. You can open the locker and spawn a ton of any weapon you've previously touched. Here I'm spawning a good 8 or so of the same gun. No more scrounging desperately for weapons. Oh, and you can save anywhere from the pause menu, so that's another tradition ruined. Speaking of, while the time limit still exists, it's never been more lenient than it is here, almost to the point you wonder why the developers bothered including it. In fairness, there is a nightmare mode, which makes it so you can only save at toilets and also gives you stricter time limits, but it reeks of Capcom Vancouver trying to have their cake and eat it. Dead Rising seems to have drifted away from its roots in order to please an action-oriented, focus-tested, broader audience. In doing so, it's lost all of its charm, and instead of being a unique gem, it's now another indistinguishable third-person action game. Consider me to be severely disappointed. Visually, the first thing I noticed about Dead Rising 3 was the lack of colour. This is a very drab game that copies its grey and brown cousins of the era. Previous entries were eccentric, colourful and flamboyant, while this game is just boring. I very quickly learned my way around every area of Dead Rising 1 and 2. Their maps had distinctive landmarks, made great use of themed areas, and actually felt alive. Which is almost ironic, now I think about it. Willamette and Fortune City were as much the stars of the show as Frank and Chuck were. You can show me any screenshot from the first 2 games and I'll immediately tell you where the player is. Los Peridos doesn't have that same quality. Everything blends together, nothing sticks out, and I'm constantly relying on the in-game map for directions. Bigger does not mean better. In a similar fashion, I praise the previous games for tying their events, characters, and settings into the design of their user interface. Nick's a mechanic. A toolbox theme would fit perfectly, as these menus are literally the player tinkering under the hood. So, what did we get? Oh, well, this isn't imaginative or interesting at all. This is bland, lazy, and could belong to any game. Come on! There was such a missed opportunity here! How did they fail to do something with this? I've criticised past entries for having models and textures that look dated by today's standards, but were serviceable at the time of release. Dead Rising 3 looked old on day 1. It's relatively inoffensive, but it's by no means impressive. It's entirely bog standard, and it looks like very little effort was actually involved. In fact, that's a good way to sum up this game overall. In the 15 or so hours I've spent playing it, my anger subsided and I found myself just playing through the game on autopilot. It wasn't a terrible experience, but it wasn't enjoyable either. It was entirely mediocre, middle-of-the-road, uninteresting, vanilla, bland, dull, uninspired. I'm actually surprised I found as much to say about this game as I have, considering it's overall completely unremarkable. So that, in a nutshell, is Dead Rising 3. Is there anyone out there this game could appeal to, or anyone who should bother purchasing and playing this game? No, there isn't. Now, I know some of you would like me to go on to cover Dead Rising Chop Till You Drop on the Wii, but as you may have noticed, this video took a little while to come out. I'm a little bit Dead Rising'd out at the moment, so I am going to move on to some other games to cover, probably some shorter games for the next couple of videos, and I'm going to store this as one to come back to. Now, on the good side of things, my wrist is a lot better. I'm not needing the brace anywhere near as often as I did before. However, I still need to pace myself to ensure that the wrist doesn't get worse again. You might also notice I'm wearing glasses now as well, which is new. My eyesight was apparently getting worse and I hadn't noticed, so this'll fix that. Essentially, I do need to be careful because if I overdo any of my hobbies, my artwork, video making, anything like that, then this could get worse again, and at that point it would need surgery, and then I can't do any videos or anything for you for quite some time if that happens. So we're going to avoid that situation. I'm going to bring things out at a steadier pace, and to be honest, I might do a couple of shorter games for the next few videos, rather than 15 hours or so of recording footage. At any rate, thank you very much for watching. I don't know what the next game's going to be yet, but if you've got suggestions, by all means let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Despite me throwing it like that, it's actually in surprisingly good shape. They made this out of really resilient plastic, which is, sadly, the nicest thing I can say about this game.